But why don't we just say, yo, if they got half? But my granddaddy used to go down to all right, a quarter. Well, my great daddy was known to go down to the slave quarters too.
They're down to an eighth.
Damn. Anybody in your family not like fucking them? How about you? Are you fucking them? I'd rather not say.
I plead the fifth.
A gentleman never tells. Oops, wrong one.
Boom.
Warning! If you do not know the significance of the 14th Amendment, watch at your own risk. A 14th Amendment video is linked in the description for your learning convenience.
Do you know what the 14th Amendment is?
The 14th Amendment. Yeah, I just read this yesterday. It gives us due process and equal
rights, and
yeah,
I think it was part of free to slaves.
right.
I think even the 15th is what the marriage one now. You know what? I'm gonna back out from all that. But yeah, get up on the 14th Amendment, folks.
Hey guys, welcome to Hip Hughes History. We're going to take a quick look at the term Jim Crow, its meaning, its influence, its impact on the United States of America, because you need to know whether you're a kid in school, whether you're a lifelong learner, or whether you're cray-cray on the internet. Understanding Jim Crow should be a requirement of citizenship.
And I agree. Now, the reason why this is important, because one of the things that was said on this thread was that some of this stuff should be taught in schools. And it's kind of like enough with the distractions. Sometimes stating the obvious is a distraction. When we're all trying to figure something out, we're trying to do something, and you have somebody who just, oh, and they stating the obvious, like they're adding in new information.
Right.
It's like, yo, what are you doing? You're slowing down the process. So maybe rather than saying it should have been taught in schools, question why. Just don't assume, just saying it should have been taught in schools is like, well, maybe they just didn't get around to it.
Right.
Or maybe they decided to teach something else.
It's an excuse.
Yeah. If this is history and they're supposed to be teaching history, and then you're defending history with you can't rewrite history,
right?
And it's obviously they didn't teach this in school, then obviously some kind of history was rewritten.
Yeah.
So, even now they barely teach civics and economics in school.
Really?
And yeah,
that was big when we were going to school.
Yeah. At least from what I've seen, they haven't. But
wow. Oh, the 15th Amendment. So important. It's the right to vote.
Oh, look at that. For everybody?
Yes, for everybody.
Oh, okay. Apparently. But, and just getting back to Black Lives Matter a little bit. When people say something like Black Lives Matter, once again, I said it earlier, it's not exclusive. Put it this way. When women were saying, hey, we want to vote, let us vote, they weren't saying, well, we don't think you shouldn't be able to vote.
Right.
They were just saying we women should be able to vote. Voting should just be for
our opinion counts too.
Yeah, it shouldn't just be for white men.
Yeah, exactly.
It should be for white men and white women.
Right. We make decisions too. All of us. It
should be for white men and white women.
Yeah.
But it should be for women. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? So that's all they're saying. It's like, yeah, our opinions matter. Mm-hmm. Our votes matter.
Women matter.
Women matter. And they do. You know what I'm saying? So, and nobody assumed, all they did was just in that movement, they question women's ability to earn the right to vote. You know, they question their ability to their competence to vote. So you have to ask, why are you questioning? Does Black Lives Matter? Are you questioning
Right.
the competency of blacks to matter? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like which goes back into the romanticism of the South and all the Civil War, how it's no, the lost cause was part that one of the tenets of the lost cause was that the slaves were happy and that this was better for the slaves. So if you're saying Black lives don't matter, you're saying, yeah, you guys aren't smart enough to matter.
Right. Yeah.
The only way you're gonna matter is if we oversee you.
You're just not as important.
Yeah, exactly.
You're probably on the list right under straws being bad for our environment.
You haven't earned the right to matter.
So let's talk a little bit about the origin of the word Jim Crow before we go into kind of the concept of de jure and de facto
And I'll be honest, this is something I didn't
Jump
know.
Jim Crow was an old song and dance routine that originated in 1828, which was written by a white comedian by the name of T.D. Daddy Rice, who would perform in blackface, basically to make fun of slaves.
Wheel about and turn about and do just so. Every time I wheel about, I jump Jim Crow.
The term
Jim Crow. That was so awful. It was just so, oh my gosh, in your face, mean and
Exactly. So even the comedy of that day, everything about that day was to dehumanize and just
oh yeah.
to strip away intelligence,
Yep.
to strip away anything that resembled humanity.
It's like it's no different than if he would have dressed up like a dog and act like a dog. He's making fun of something that that doesn't matter to him.
No, I think it would have been. I still think it's worse, because he would have did all kinds of things of that, like that dog. But because it was a human acting like that dog, you still would have got the sense that, oh look, that dog can laugh, that dog can jump. You know what I'm saying? Maybe he would have, oh look, he's throwing up his leg. You know what I'm saying? You still would have appreciated the interpretation. He would have struggled to try to dress up like a dog and play a dumb dog. You feel me? But for to play a black person, it was easy to just throw that shit on your face, put on some shitty slave clothes, and act like a monkey, and people were like, ha ha ha, see, they are stupid. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, it was easy. The only time you played that was when you was playing something dumb. You know what I mean? Like there was no Lassie movie for the slave. You know, oh boy, what are you trying to say? Yeah, massa, there's Timmy fell down a lake, massa. No, that was reserved for Lassie. Oh, Timmy fell down a lake, boy. Let's go get him. Ruff, ruff, let's go. You know what I'm saying? They never played a dumb dog. You know what I'm saying? All the dogs, Scooby's probably the least intelligent, but even he gets the job done.
Yeah, he does. You can't hate on him for
But the slaves, whenever they played the slaves, they never played a slave that was like, yeah, man, I'm the man. I'm the best slave, coolest slave on the plantation. Everybody was smashing me, even the master's daughter. Nah, it
There's
was
no super slave out there or anything.
it was always the dumb, ignorant Neanderthals, black Neanderthals, blackathalls.
Like I can't even make comment. Yeah, because
What were you gonna say?
nothing. All those jokes you got.
You don't feel like you can say blackathal? Can you laugh at it? Do you feel like? Or do
I
you feel
think I
like
can
it's
laugh at it in this context here.
I
but
don't want
I-
to make you feel uncomfortable.
You're not making me feel uncomfortable, but yeah, they're not the jokes I would spit out.
No,
But you can.
no, but then again, like,
I wouldn't. They wouldn't even come out right.
No.
You know what I mean?
I wouldn't hear you think of you saying blackathals.
Like, that would sound really bad if I said it. Think about it.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
term Jim itself is short for Jimmy, like I'm going to Jimmy a lock, and that was a crowbar. So a crowbar in the 1800s was sometimes called a Jim or a Jimmy. And then, of course, crow itself was used as a term for blacks as early as the 1700s. In terms of jump Jim Crow, farmers used to feed their crows corn-soaked whiskey. Then the crows would get drunk and kind of dance around, not being able to fly as the farmers, kind of beat the crows to death.
That's so
there's
mean.
multiple meanings behind the term Jim Crow. They all refer in a negative connotation
Yeah.
to slaves and to freedmen, to blacks. And now we're going to turn that term Jim Crow into a system of racial oppression.
White people are very creative in their hate.
Say what?
White people are very creative in their hate. Jim Crow.
I'm sure they appreciate the compliment. Yeah, I guess.
I hope so. It was pretty backhanded.
Yeah, they are very creative. They are very creative. And Martin Luther King said that he feels that one of his last speeches, he says that he feels like the other side has used their time more productively. You know what I mean? Coming up with the laws and the ways in which they were going to box a motherfucker in and keep him down. Like the thought process and the time that has to go into this
Yeah.
shit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like these are like, imagine how many, we know how much taxpayers' dollar go into them just having a meeting or two now.
Exactly. And the effort that goes into
Yeah,
it.
and usually they just come out of, we got a bill for some, extra diapers,
No, that's a job. Like,
but no, my point is we know how much money is wasted in lawmaking. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
All their time is billed. All their whatever is billed. This, that, and the other is billed. You know what I'm saying? So how many days did they spend getting together just so they could talk about how to keep niggas down? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So how many days did taxpayers had to pay for lunch? And they had to have these meetings with local businesses and things like that. So how much money was just spent on the time required to come up with all this junk to do this?
Yeah, there's a big production behind that curtain.
Still had those southern governments that were being controlled by kind of Confederate forces. So those southern white Democratic dominated legislatures would pass something called black codes right after the Civil War that severely limited the rights of these new freedmen. And most of these black codes were based on vagrancy laws, where if you were black, you had to prove that you had a job and that job was recognized by whites. And if you couldn't do that, you would be forced into labor. You could be put in prison and then kind of leased out to people in order to do jobs. So many historians have called black code slavery by another name. But that's going to change during Reconstruction because starting in 1867, the Republican-dominated Congress.
So just to stop it there a little bit, basically, right after the Civil Wars, like we touched on in other episodes, all right, everybody. See, what the thing is, people have to understand is that even though they went to war, it wasn't like Lincoln in the beginning really was like, yeah, slaves are my thing. He was like, yeah, slaves are the thing. He if he had to choose, I guess he would be like, you know what, I wouldn't. I would prefer, that some slaves be let out, but ultimately he went to war to save the Union.
Mm-hmm.
The South went to war for slavery.
Exactly.
The Union said, look, slavery got to stop. South said, we want to succeed.
Yep.
Union said, no, you can't.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we do. At that point, Lincoln said, hey, if I could have, saved the Union and freed all the slaves, I would have.
Right.
If I could have saved the Union and freed some of the slaves, I would have. If I could have saved the Union and freed none of the slaves, I would have. And that was in a response to, I guess, a question or a debate question or something along those lines. But in the end, he says freeing the slaves was the right thing to do for the Union.
Right.
It would make the Union stronger. But ultimately, it was just about, look, the Union is saved. Can you guys just go the fuck home?
Yeah.
And agree to never do this again.
No, it's getting old.
Yeah. In the end, the South did strike first. This whole Northern aggression bullshit.
Yeah,
No,
like, come on.
they took over bases. They took over all kinds of shit
Yeah,
in
it's sneaky as fuck.
the South before the Civil War actually started. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were sneaky as fuck. So, so anyway, so after they went home, it's like, yeah, they was like, okay, we got our asses kicked, but we're gonna show you niggas. So imagine you just been freed and you have to get a job. Otherwise, if you're found without a job that some white person says, yeah, this is a real job, you're going to basically be thrown back into slavery. Who's going to give a slave a job? You mean I got to pay this guy now?
Exactly.
No. Hold on. Let me just wait until he gets thrown into slavery, and then I just
And
get
then
him
I
at a
get it for
discount.
free. Yeah.
You know what I'm
Yeah, yeah, buy them used.
Yeah, you're not gonna give them for free. Now it's state organized slavery.
Yeah.
You gotta pay taxes for that.
Yep. But you're going to get them at a discount rate, probably.
Yeah, exactly.
Is going to basically mandate through the enforcement of the 13th and 14th and 15th Amendment, the military occupation of the South. This is the period of history from basically 1867 to 1877, about a decade, called Reconstruction.
Now, what this Reconstruction thing was basically, the Union kind of had an idea what was going on, and so they sent in basically the military to kind of sort of occupy the South, and to ensure that the slaves were freed and things like that. Which is another reason why it probably took as long as it did. You know what I'm saying? And even then, local governments were still fighting it.
Yeah.
Trying to fight it in courts and stall and things like that. And it was like, from my understanding, it wasn't like it was a super military occupation. I think from my understanding, it was like less than 20,000 troops spread out throughout the South.
Oh.
But their job was, to stop lynchings and stop all that bullshit. You know what I'm saying? Just like try to bring back some unionized order to the country. So that's another thing that played into the lost cause. When they write about this period, they write about it as they were oppressed people. Like
Woe is me.
yeah, like the northern troops were down here just causing mayhem and plundering and looting and just all kinds of shit. And it was like,
And they had to clean themselves back up
Yeah.
and be strong.
and yeah, exactly. And yeah, it was just like, if the Northerners would just leave us alone to our way of life, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying, things like that. And it was none of that. So
Playing victim.
another part of the lost cause, they try to act like the Northern troops, none of them gave a fuck about slavery, and the Southern troops didn't give a fuck about slavery. And that's not true either. As the war goes on, the Northerners begin to, in their diaries, begin to start noting that yeah, because basically what happens is, as these slaves are like running away or escaping because of the war, they like following behind the Northern troops. And so they're getting to kind of like see these slaves and see what happened to them as they liberate them. So after a while, they started taking on that mission. Ultimately, you take on the mission of your commanders.
Right.
So in the end, South was fighting for slavery, North was fighting for fucking the end of shit. It was in both their charters.
Yeah.
And during Reconstruction, the black codes were eliminated, and for the most part, African Americans were allowed to vote. And you did have African Americans that were elected to high office. You had governors, there was a African American senator, there were African American state legislators. So it was kind of working, but of course, it's all being held together by military occupation. And then there was an incident in Louisiana in 1873 called the Colfax Massacre. And this is really kind of the Southern Democratic forces trying to coalesce around groups in order to take back what they see as their rightful place as leaders of these Southern governments. And in Louisiana, at the Colfax Massacre in 1873, there was a group called the White League. And this White League, unlike the Klan, which was kind of a terrorist under the ground organization, the White Leagues and the Red Shirts, groups throughout the South, were open about their, opposition to African American rights and their wanting of power. So at Colfax, this White League basically attacked a courthouse that was being held by Republican forces. And we basically have a mini civil war at Colfax. We ended up having about 150 African Americans that were murdered, maybe more. We're not really sure about mass graves and people that were thrown into the river and such. But that culminated in a federal trial with the conviction of some of those people who did that based on the 1870 Enforcement Act saying.
Wow. There's like so much in that, man.
That was, yeah, man.
But the gist is that in the South at this time, people, they still won't just let it go. They still won't just let it go. Now you got groups forming, some covertly, some overtly, all opposing this shit. This is the one where they said 150 Negroes were killed, 3 white men. 3 white men. So it sounds
That
like they just went. Yeah, it sounds like they just went there to kill black people.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? They upset that black people are being elected to office, that black people are owning businesses, that black people are doing this and black people are doing that. Every time that something has started, there's always been something to kick off that destroys it.
Yeah.
Yep. So, and when you destroy these, you can't just come into a neighborhood and kill 150 people in that neighborhood and then expect for that neighborhood to still flourish.
Exactly.
Name any neighborhood.
You can't burn that neighborhood down.
Name any neighborhood where people... No, you can burn it down. You can burn it down. Fuck all that. You can burn it down. Those people can just build it back up. They can use those same bricks that are sitting there smoldering to build up a new neighborhood. They probably build it better. You know why they can do it? Because they're still alive. But go into a neighborhood, don't touch any of the buildings, and just kill all the people. What's going to happen to that neighborhood the next day? Are you going to see the garbage get picked up? Anybody going to go to the corner bodega, buy a hero and some CCs? No, they're all dead. Anybody that's left is going to be those households, those families are destroyed. Now, imagine if you do both. You go into any neighborhood, you burn it down, and you kill 150 niggas in that neighborhood. How is that neighborhood, how many decades, how many generations is it going to take for that neighborhood, that community, to get back on its feet? You feel me? How many generations does it take for that neighborhood to get the guile and the confidence and the courage to get back on their feet? They just had 150 of their people slaughtered, everything they known destroyed, and they told to get back in their place.
It's a lot of hate right there.
And this is before the laws. This is doing the black codes, bro. No, actually, no, this is doing Reconstruction. There's military occupation. They still was like, fuck that. So the Civil War is about slavery. The aftermath is about getting it back. You can't get it back. You can't, unless you're willing to go back to war with the U.S. government. You can't get slavery back. Slavery is done.
Yeah.
You can't, you can get them and you can beat them up and you can do whatever you want, but you can't make them a slave anymore.
Nope.
That is done. That's the reason why they just kill them. You know what I'm saying? There's no need to lynch people and kill people and treat people like that just because you can't have them as a slave. That's why you're doing it. If I can't have you, no one will. Is that where we at now? So that's what I'm saying. Here, we're just, the people that are here are some of the same people that fought and led regiments in the Civil War. Obviously, they didn't change their mind.
Right.
So, this is just 1870. You know what I mean? Just 40 years from where we're at now. So, boom.
Saying that Congress is going to have the ability to prosecute people that are violating the rights of freedmen. In 1876, the Supreme Court comes out with a decision called United States versus Shank, where they basically kind of take the teeth out of the Enforcement Act by saying that because this White League was not a government group but a private organization, the Enforcement Act didn't hold, that private groups could discriminate. You had to get them a different way. You probably had to use state and local courts, which weren't going to work back then. So
basically, in 1870, they had an act where it was like, look, enough. You guys got to stop this discrimination and all this bullshit. But they were still doing it. They were still doing it, still doing it, still doing it. You can pass any laws you want, but unless you're willing to lock motherfuckers up,
Right.
people are going to do what they want.
Yep.
So eventually they had a case, Shank, and that went all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court basically said, look, the Enforcement Act only applies to the government. You know what I mean? So let's apply that to now. Right now, yeah. Right now, businesses can't discriminate over sexual orientation, race, and things. There are things on the books that say they can't.
Right.
But let's just say they could. Well, right now they could. Well, we have social media right now, and we just won't buy your Aunt your mama, syrup.
Right.
I don't like it anymore. It sounds racist. I don't want to buy your Aunt your mama syrup anymore. It's my right to not fucking do it. You know what I'm saying? Well, but back then they didn't have that. Back then, also, right now, if Black Lives Matter was actually discriminative, enforced on people's civil rights, the government can't do anything about it. They have to do it a different way. Now, frankly, that sounds broad as hell, because I still don't see how people can, like, I guess that had to do prior to, like, nah, niggas can't come in my store and stuff like that,
Right.
I don't know if that had anything to do with, like, lynching a dude, because that's a crime. For that, they just give them an all-white jury. You know what I'm saying? They get off. So, so I think I got a little twisted around on that. But yeah, it is like right now, a private organization, we can just not fucking fuck with them. You know what I'm saying? We're not buy it. We can boycott their stuff, not, go to their games or whatever if we feel like the NFL is racist. But back in the day, the NFL could have been as racist as they wanted to be, and the Enforcement Act couldn't stop it one way or the other. Only it was for the government. Although at that point, even then, there was no way to. The government was just finding other ways to be discriminatory.
Discriminatory.
Yeah. Discriminative. Why does that word sound weird?
But it's discriminative. Yeah, no, that's right.
So that's kind of a breakdown of federal control over, the Southern governments and the rise of what's going to become Jim Crow. And then really it all falls apart in the election of 1876. You can watch, there's a video on the Compromise of 1877. You can click down in the description below to watch that. But basically there is a deal in the presidential election where the Southern Democrats kind of give their votes to the Republicans in Rutherford beat Hayes. Samuel Tilden, the Democrat, lost, even though he was from New York. That's another story. But the sticking point, the compromise, the sellout, is going to be the end of military occupation in the South by Reconstruction forces, that they're going to be able to own their governments again. And this is really the beginning of the birth of Jim Crow and segregation de jure down South. So let's take a look at some of the specifics of what Jim Crow laws we're talking about.
So yeah, basically, and that's another thing about knowing your history. Everybody who's Republican right now, you're basically championing what the racist Democrats were championing back in those days. You get what I'm saying? All they did was just, and that's why they're saying, like, there's just one party. Because in a sense, yeah, they just flipped.
Yes.
They still kept the same shit that they felt since the beginning.
Except
they just flipped.
Yeah.
Flip colors.
Yep,
That's it.
That's it.
That's it. So everybody that's being sold on this bullshit right now, you're just being sold on something that was flipped. Ultimately, it's all about what do you care about. It's not about what party you're in. It's about what
Right.
you care about. So if you care about symbols and
And all,
and
yeah.
white supremacy
Yep.
and greed, then cool. But the thing you got to understand is that the Republicans, while they flipped the social issues, they kept the business bullshit. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like,
They got rid of the other
yeah,
bullshit.
yeah, they kept what they got rid of. They screened small government, but it's really small government, mad control, and so big government when it comes to social issues.
Right.
So yeah, that's what it's called. Before it was the Southern strategy, then it became the culture war, and now I don't know what it is now. Now it's a Trump. Whatever.
Yeah, please. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, it was the anti-Obama, and the Trump just came out of that. You know what I'm saying?
It's anti-Obama.
And how they're going to affect freedmen, African Americans in the South as they seek to claim the mantle of the American dream. Now, Congress wasn't done in the 1870s. They passed something called the Civil Rights Act of 1875, which was
1875.
basically kind of a reclaim
It's a
to
good
the
year.
14th Amendment in
Sounds
terms
like a
of
good
public
year.
accommodations, that there would be no segregation in places of public accommodations like restaurants and hotels and trains and all of that kind of jazz. But that's going to be torn apart in 1896 with Plessy versus Ferguson. Now, Plessy versus Ferguson isn't based on schools, even though Brown versus Board of Ed is going to overturn it. It's really based on the concept of segregation by legislation. And in
Yeah.
Louisiana, it was always illegal for blacks and whites to ride on the same car. But the Separate Car Act of Louisiana kind of added coloreds to the mix. They had a classification for mixed races. And if you were 1/8 of African ancestry, you were considered colored and you couldn't ride on the train. So this was an organized effort
My
by
gosh.
the black and colored community.
Yo, they put so much thought into that shit.
Yes.
But what if?
And they broke it down to a
Cause
fraction.
I tell you, sir, my daddy used to have a liking for the Negro, and he been known to go down to the quarters and let's just say do ungodly things. My God, he was such a righteous man. God rest his soul. But nonetheless, a few of them primates
Oh my gosh.
have a little bit of his blood in them. I couldn't bear myself to, exterminate those rodents. So what do we do in situations like that? Because I just can't bear to sit beside them on no damn train. Well, why don't we just say, yo, if they got half. But my granddaddy used to go down to all right, a quarter. Well, my great daddy was known to go down to the slave quarters too.
Go down to an 8.
Damn. Anybody in your family not like fucking them? How about you? Are you fucking them? I'd rather not say.
I plead the 5th.
A gentleman never tells. I say a southern gentleman.
Oh man.
Like, yo, if they would have kept their dicks out of fucking slaves that they seem to hate so much, that 1/8 bullshit would have not even been necessary. Like, you created that problem.
Right?
You like what? How many Africans came over this motherfucker with 7/8 white blood in them? None.
Yeah, like
Because think about that. If you had 1/8 in you, you were considered black. So that 1/8 was more valuable to you than, because it determined what you were. So to you, it was the most valuable thing you got. Was more valuable than that fucking 7/8 of white blood that you
yeah.
had. The fuck is this going on? What you guys think y'all vampires? The fuck is going on?
And that 1/8 determined whether you was walking or not.
Yeah, whether you was on the back of the train, whether you was lynchable or nah. What, an eighth of anything? Like imagine if yo, bro, I saw you got fucking you got $800 in your pocket. You know what I mean? And you got fucking $700 bills, a 50, fucking four, fucking 220s. You know what I mean? A 10, a 5, and 5 ones.
Oh my gosh.
But just because you got 5 ones, they're saying nah. You don't got $800. You just got
They
$5.
don't even exist.
Yeah, you just got $5. Like, come on, bro.
That's crazy.
Like, what are you talking about? Like, what are you talking about, bro? Like, I don't know.
That's crazy though.
It doesn't make any sense to me. Like, once again, it was a situation they created. So, since they created it, so you still get to have your cake and you get to eat it and beat it too.
To fight this new law. And Homer Plessy, who was 1/8 black, he was very of light complexion, kind of walked onto the train one day, and he had to announce to the steward of the train his racial heritage because nobody could tell just by looking at him. Then he proceeded to sit down and get arrested, kind of in the spirit of Rosa Parks, which launched the court case Plessy.
My name is
Ferguson,
Harold
where the
Plessy.
court is going
I am
to
1/8
end up saying
black.
separate
Can you
is
imagine that
equal,
scene on the
that
bus?
segregational laws are constitutional.
I'm surprised they
because
didn't get
they're
fucked
still
up, get
giving
choked out.
African Americans a seat at the table. It's just a separate table, and it's an equal table. And of course, we all know that not to be true.
So yeah, so that inserted the whole separate but equal situation, which even to today still resonates. You know what I mean?
It sure does.
Even down to for people to say racism is dead in this country.
No, it's,
When did it die? Because separate but equal was still technically even alive during the crack cocaine
Yep.
epidemic. You know what I'm saying? Like cocaine over here in these communities were treated separately than crack in these communities, although it's the same bullshit. So that's the 80s.
mm-hmm.
You feel me? I'm up doing break
Yeah.
dancing and dancing
Hell
and
yeah.
shit. You know what I mean?
We grew
Like,
up in the 80s.
yeah, you know, depending on where in the 80s, I might even be, you know, checking out a
Yep.
few shorties. You know what I mean? Beginning of the 80s, not so much. End of the 80s, know what I mean? Shit. So, I don't know, man. Like, right?
Hell yeah. That wasn't that long ago, man.
Like I don't know. Like, what do you think of all this stuff so far? You have any opinions on this stuff? I know I get on my little rantsy rants, but you know,
I learn a lot from seeing you do your research on this stuff.
Mhm.
And like I always say, you're so much smarter than me because you're able to get this. And there are sometimes you have a way of breaking it down for me. Again, it's all very new to me.
Mhm.
I'm really thrown back by a lot of it, a lot of the history involved in it. The fact that we're not that far removed from a lot of these change of laws, and the 1800s alone was a big era as far as changes. I mean, we're in the 1960s even. We're not that far removed from making law changes just because of race. I'm glad that I have the rights that I do now, and without all of those movements, I wouldn't have them. I'm glad that we're past it, but the whole racism is dead thing, racism hasn't existed till now. That's ignorance to me. Like you had pointed out earlier, we have 60, 70-year-olds that are that have been through all of that are still alive, which means that racism did not die.
Yeah, they are alive. They got to, like I said, they got to enjoy separate but not separate but equal.
Absolutely.
They
And
got
it's
to
part of their
enjoy.
nurturing as well when it comes to nurturing their own family.
Like, take any of the, take the violence out of it all. Let's say none of that violence happened. They still got to enjoy like, the system which propped them up
Right.
and shot the other person down. Once
Right.
again, it's like there was this video of these kids. They were doing a race and they wanted to show white privilege. And I think some of the things that they talked on that they did kind of hit the message, missed the point. It's like, if you only had one parent, if you only had this, that, and the other, if you only had, take two steps back. And before the race started, it was like the white people were like way up here, and yeah, but it is the same situation.
Yeah.
And even as an immigrant, if you come here, depending on your complexion, when you come here, things could be a little different.
That's very true. That is very true.
And even then, there is no system in place to keep you in a place. That's why people get upset with immigrants, because the immigrants are new.
Yeah.
They don't know any better. They haven't assimilated, but they still are achieving and they having access to the American dream.
Yeah.
The same motherfuckers that are bitching about Black Lives Matter, trying to keep us down, are the same motherfuckers that turn to an immigrant and be like, fuck you.
Yeah.
And that's why, if you're an immigrant, regardless of what complexion you are, you should be a little wary of that situation.
Absolutely.
So now, and not to even go too further into this Jim Crow stuff, because, I got a feeling that we're going to touch these things on other situations.
It's not the last time.
Hey, when that shit touch, man, I just do the running man.
What up, folks? It's your boy TMC here. Just wanted to give another PSA about budget. You have a budget. I have a budget. Hell, freaking dog catcher has a budget. We all have budgets. He is working within those things, and sometimes being able to make more out of a little less. And you're just now starting out as an artist. Maybe you have a project in which you don't have a big budget for. Or maybe you just want to do some behind the scenes stuff. Well, that's where we come in.
Glock 19, you don't want it, man. Gotta sell a little 80 where you want it.
Guys, thanks for watching. And to see more T4J content, please visit TMC4JMC.com.
And don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe down below.
That's what's up. Peace.